Hello and welcome to the Ice Guys. This is the show that takes you into the world of the National Hockey League. Every game, every day, from a betting perspective. With pro sports handicappers, Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith, and various guests from the world of hockey and sports betting. And now, here's your host, Ian Cameron.
We are back, the Ice Guys, Monday, February the 5th, post-All-Star break. The stretch drive of the NHL season officially begins today, and we are all set and ready for it. Ian Cameron and Alex B. Smith with you, ready to talk NHL once again. And Monday's card with just a nice little, brief little, small little baby step, if you will, back into action following the All-Star break with just 2 games on the docket tonight. But things will warm up quickly. We've got 8 coming your way on Tuesday, but nice little appetizer to get everybody's appetite back for hockey following the All-Star break. Before we get into tonight's 2 games, we're going to take some time to really talk about a lot of news took place in the NHL over the course of the All-Star break. And several items I wanted to discuss on the show, since we really haven't seen you since Wednesday last week, which was our last show before the break. And I do want to mention, though, if you are a Patreon member, you have seen us a couple of times over the weekend. We posted 2 Patreon exclusive videos for our Patreon members. One was talking about home team goal songs, and the other about our best and worst jerseys, in our opinions, in the NHL. So make sure you check that out. We posted both of those videos over the weekend on our Patreon page at patreon.com/iceguys. And make sure you check out those videos. And we certainly will have more bonus content for you in the weeks and months ahead for our Patreon members for just, again, $10 per month there at patreon.com/iceguys. But as far as our daily show is concerned, this will be our first time talking to you since Wednesday. First, news item that I want to talk about is the trade that went down over the break. Shawn Monahan going to the Winnipeg Jets from the Montreal Canadiens. Monahan has put up a very solid season overall with the Canadiens. In fact, of late, he has really played well. And look, I have certainly had no shortage of ripping this guy in the past, and rightfully so. There's been times where he's just not able to stay healthy, and there's been times where he's kind of disappeared during games, during seasons, going back to when he was with the Calgary Flames. But right now, this season that he's putting up right now, you can't complain. There's not, he's having a great season, 35 points in 49 games. Unlike previous seasons, he's been able, to keep himself healthy. It's a nice addition to the Winnipeg Jets. Winnipeg did give up a lot, though. Conditional pick and a first rounder. So I think you got to give Kent Hughes for the Montreal Canadiens a lot of credit, for the return that he was able to get and fetch in return for the services of Shawn Monahan. My biggest concern, Alex, is this. We know he's having a good season. We know there's skill. We know there's talent. We know there's an ability to not only finish, but play make and facilitate as well. He's clearly shown that this year with this Montreal Canadiens team. But my concern is these playoff disappearing acts that we have seen from Shawn Monahan in years past. Now, maybe that was part of that whole Calgary culture, because you could put them all on a fucking billboard, and a poster for who disappeared and who didn't show up in the postseason for Calgary in some of those seasons. Gaudreau was certainly culpable. He was not someone that brought his best during some of those playoff years, but you've got to factor Shawn Monahan into that mix, that he just did not play to the level that he is capable of at the biggest time of the year and the biggest spot of the year, which is Stanley Cup playoff hockey. So that's really the one concern, Alex, I do have, is that Monahan's got to show me, the ability to elevate his game in April and May. And we have not always seen him do that in the past. But as far as how a fit with this Winnipeg Jets team, there's absolutely no question. He is an absolutely phenomenal fit. I think he's going to be a good two-way player. And this team already has a bunch of players that are very good at both ends of the puck, led by, of course, their great captain, Adam Lowry. So it's a nice fit. My only concern is I want to see playoff Shawn Monahan that elevates his game to another level, not the playoff Shawn Monahan we saw in Calgary. But what are your thoughts, Alex, on that deal?
So here's the thing we have to kind of take into consideration with pretty much all the trades moving forward, right? That a lot of things are predicated on players are going to be put in different positions and put in different roles, whatever the team needs to get to, forward within the playoffs and making a run. So in this case, the Shawn Monahan going to Winnipeg, he's not going to be asked to do what he needed to do in Calgary or what he needed to do in Montreal. He could take a step back. He doesn't have to be as productive offensively as long as he's, like I said, being an efficient two-way player, getting the job done on the defensive end. And doing those little things that don't show up on the score sheet. I think that's the biggest thing, because you have a player of that high talent. He's going to chip in some goals. He's going to give you that offense. You can rely on it at certain times and points. Now, like you said, can he find that next level and give it to you consistently? That's fine. But the Jets don't need him to be a top six breakout for it like the Calgary needed him to be and step up to win a series when they were in the playoffs. Like what Montreal needed from him, Montreal pretty much needed him to be, the number one, number two guy at times if Caulfield and Suzuki weren't going to be available. So I think we're seeing that with a lot of these trades where guys, they're talented enough to be in the top six role. They're talented enough to be in those power play roles, but the fact that maybe you don't have to do that, take a little pressure off of these guys. You're part of this collective now. We're all going to work together, especially a team like Winnipeg. Everybody's got to be on point for Winnipeg to do well in a series and moving forward in a postseason. He's just going to have to be another piece. He doesn't have to be the bigger piece. He just needs to be another piece that fits in nicely, and that's going to take time with a lot of these players as well. So something to keep in mind, especially when we talk about player props and different things. Yes, Monahan might have been a good look in certain spots with Montreal. Those spots may not appear, and we have to see those reflected in the price as well when we start talking about goals and assists and power play points, things of that nature.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see, how he fits in. Like I say, I don't think there's going to be it's a great point about the lack of pressure. He's not going to have as much at all on his shoulders, which is really, really a great thing. I think should be a great thing for him. It should be allow him to play with a lot more relaxed, I guess you could say, going into the postseason this year with the Winnipeg Jets. But again, he does fit a very a need, and he's going to be able to slot in nicely. He's not going to be top line. He'll be second, third line for this Winnipeg Jets team, and he'll be, I think because he's going to just slide into that kind of role, it's going to be a positive for him. But again, there is that playoff question that he's going to have to answer. The other big trade that took place, and this trade literally happened, I think, just a couple of hours after our final show on Wednesday before the break. And, of course, that's the deal with the Vancouver Canucks and the Calgary Flames. Elias Lindholm, of course, going to the Vancouver Canucks. And you talk about another great fit, and that is the case here with this deal as well. Elias Lindholm, who, again, because that lotto line has been absolutely sensational for the Vancouver Canucks, I can't see Rick Tocchet breaking them up. Lindholm's probably going to be able to slot in just nicely on a second line center spot, which is perfect for him in a year where his offense has really not been there. He's still going to be able to, and what's not to say he can't find his offensive stride again. I know he wasn't scoring this year in Calgary, but you got a better team around you right now. Don't count out that Elias Lindholm can't re-find his scoring touch again. I definitely think that's a possibility now here in Vancouver. But more importantly, what he's going to give this team is diligent forecheck, face-offs. He's excellent. Obviously, winning face-offs is more important than ever before in the NHL when puck possession is such an important part of winning and controlling the flow of the game. So certainly, Elias Lindholm's ability to do that is integral for why the Vancouver Canucks were interested in him. His play away from the puck has always been great. It's always been a strength of Lindholm's game, is being a very good defensive-minded center. So there's a lot to like about the Vancouver Canucks adding him and just becoming another piece to a puzzle that on paper, Alex, looks exceptional right now. A potential Stanley Cup winning and at the very least a Stanley Cup contending puzzle for this Vancouver Canucks team, bringing in Elias Lindholm. Now, they had to give up, of course, Andrei Kuzmenko, who went to Calgary, but Kuzmenko and Tocchet have been at odds all season. Clear from the very beginning of the season. Kuzmenko just was not jiving, with him and Rick Tocchet there in Vancouver. He'd be healthy scratched. He'd be benched at times in the past earlier this season. So I think it was just not the greatest fit player and coach. And that's what's going to happen. That's what happened in Philly with Kevin Hayes and John Tortorella. Sometimes it's just not a fit with the player and the head coach. And while both guys are going to be professional and do their best to work through the problems and continue to work and try to find a common common understanding, common ground. Sometimes that's not always going to be possible. And I think that's part of the reason why Vancouver was willing to just say, you know what, we've got a lot of offense on this team. It's not like Kuzmenko's gone, where the hell are we going to find some goals?
Right.
That's not the case with the Vancouver Canucks. So, parting with him, I see it. It's not the end of the world. And if anything, it's for Calgary, it's going to be great because maybe Kuzmenko is going to get a fresh, clean slate there, fresh start, and watch him maybe blossom there with them. They also gave up defensive prospects Yoni Yermo and Hunter Brustevich as well to the Calgary Flames, and a first-round pick in the 2024 NHL draft, as well as a conditional pick. So they gave up a lot, but you are getting someone that is certainly going to make an immediate impact, and it's the kind of player, hell, any team would want to acquire, prior to the trade deadline. Two-way center, great on faceoffs, great defensively. If he can even find a little bit of offense, and look, that's not going to be why he was brought in. That's not going to be the focus as to what made him appealing to Patrick Allvin and the brain trust with the Vancouver Canucks. It was all the other stuff. But man, if you could even just flip that switch offensively just a little bit with Elias Lindholm the rest of the season and into the playoffs with the Vancouver Canucks, and it makes this team even more dangerous. But like I say, Alex, I think it's a great fit for Elias Lindholm here in Vancouver.
Yeah, it's a wonderful trade for both sides. And, in the day and age of who fleeced who and who's getting more, this is actually a balanced trade. It looks on paper like Calgary got more, obviously, when you throw in the picks and the prospects. And those are guys that could pan out. But look at where Calgary is at the same time. Calgary's right on the cusp, but possibly if they can make a solid run, maybe sneak in and steal the last wild card spot. But more than likely, they're a team that's going to be toward the bottom, that they're not bad enough to be a lottery pick or at least a top 5 lottery pick. So you added another first-round pick, a conditional pick, and 2 prospects. That's probably anything better than what you would get out of your first-round pick that you already had in the draft right now. And now you've added a player in Kuzmenko who had great offensive, talent and showed that last year. He said this year in a bit of a different system. Obviously, Taki wanted to be more responsible defensively. Kuzmenko, that's not really his style. He goes to a team that we've historically made fun of for their shot selection and shot choice, the Calgary Sternums. And now he could have a chance to get his offense rocking and rolling. And on the same side, Lindholm, a guy we know has a great scoring touch, put up 42 goals just a couple of years ago. Now, like you said, adding that extra piece to an already potent Vancouver offense makes them a legitimate Stanley Cup threat and a dangerous team to face now at both ends of the ice in the playoffs. We talked about having the goalie in Demko that could steal you a series as well as a few games. But now you got an offense that could blow a team out of the water in a couple of those games. This is a very loaded Vancouver team, and I'm really glad I have all the futures positions I have right now making a move like this.
Yeah, exactly. You and I both. We're on Vancouver, definitely futures-wise. And like I say, I don't think there's a flash in the pan. I don't think there's a second-half collapse coming. And I think when they're in the playoffs, they're as dangerous as any team in the Western Conference. This is just too good of a body of work for them. This is just too well-coached a team. This is a great coaching staff, too, with Foote and with Gonchar and even with Yo. Maybe he's the weak link of the bunch, but
maybe.
Maybe. And to be quite honest with you, even if you think Yo is an absolute shit coach, the Tocchet, Foote, Gonchar trio, completely wipes out any concerns about Yo as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, just as long as Tocchet doesn't get sick and Yo doesn't have to end up being the interim head coach, they're fine.
Yeah, exactly. That's the main thing. But no, I love this deal. And like I say, this the situation just works out so well for this Canucks team, and it's just so impressive. What they have done so far and what they're capable of. Like it really is amazing how the Vancouver Canucks have really come together. And what's shocking, and I've said this a million times too about Vancouver, is that we know who the best players is. We know who the top talent is for this team. There's no question about it. But when you look at what they've been able to get from, look what Mikheyev has given them at times. Look at this year. Look at what Pius Suter, has given this team as well. And of course the lotto line, and they're called the lotto line. For those of you that may be not familiar with the Canadian lottery system, the Vancouver top line being called the lotto line is because the numbers of the 3 players on that top line are 6, 9, and 40. So it's Lotto 649. It's a very popular Canadian lottery, entity. And as a result, that's what they call Pedersen, Miller, and Besser There you go, the lotto line. That's how they came up with that. Lotto 649. And there you go, the numbers of those 3 players. But yeah, that line's outstanding. But let's not forget about contributions from Mikheyev. Pius Suter was on fire going into the break. No question. You've gotten very, very solid contributions from Sam Lafferty at times, Connor Garland at times, Teddy Bluger and Dakota Joshua at times, Nils Höglander. So all of that has really made things very impressive as far as the depth of this forward group is concerned. The blue line was probably my biggest concern, but Quinn Hughes is having a Norris Trophy candidate season. Philip Hronek has been outstanding. Ian Cole and Zadorov's addition, and Soucy, who hasn't even played lately because of injury. Wait till they get Carson Soucy back, from the guy they got from the Seattle Kraken. So very, very impressive for this Vancouver team. And that's why I think it's staying power. They're here to stay.
Here's the thing about them too, right? What they have right now is fine, but they could still make some moves and possibly upgrade some players. So we're talking about, the trade deadline usually be teams who are going to the playoffs need to fill this hole and that hole. Well, this team has no holes need filled right now. All they need to do at this point is either stay pat or upgrade. That's a wonderful position to be in right now.
They may not be done yet. They honestly may not be done yet as far as trying to improve this team. So definitely, I think good trade. You're right. Good hockey trade, both sides, Vancouver and Calgary. I think they'll both be satisfied with the way that trade ended up. Really, I'm not going to say much about the All-Star game. I was in and out, as far as watching it and paying attention to it. I will say this. The All-Star skills from what I saw and just the whole the presentation of the All-Star festivities in Toronto, it was a step up, definitely. It was like the last couple of years have been, and I haven't even seen any of them the last few years, including this year from start to finish. But the last few years have been a monstrosity, just awful, as far as just how bad they've been. But I think this year it was a step up. Is it great? No, to me, it's still not a great, viewing event. The All-Star skills and the All-Star game combined, but at least it looked like they stepped it up. Unfortunately, the crowd did not step it up. It was another morgue at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto for the All-Star festivities. You could hear a pin drop throughout the skills competition, probably throughout the game as well, except a couple times that a Leaf player would score, in a couple of those games on Saturday. Other than that, it was a pretty quiet, dull crowd. That is for sure. There's no question about that. So that's disappointing, when you see that, but that's what you get when you go to Toronto. You get these wine and cheese crowds, and apparently it filters through to the All-Star game, because the All-Star game tickets aren't a cheap, ticket either. So from that standpoint, you can't get the families, that are just living paycheck to paycheck in there to bring their kid to a hockey game. No, you're still going to get the rich suits in there probably for the most part. And as a result, you get that sterile environment that you always get, it seems. So that was, take it or leave it with the All-Star game festivities. Alex, how much of it did you watch?
Absolutely zero.
There you go.
None of it. I was about as high as Michael Bublé for most of the weekend, so I paid no attention to it whatsoever. I saw some highlights later because I had to write about it yesterday. Yeah. I did notice people that were upset about Nikita Kucherov apparently dogging it during the skills competition, which chances are he was probably a little bit half in the bag when he was doing that. Like I said, the crowd not being excited. Toronto can't get excited to watch their own team. Why would they get excited to watch a bunch of, basically exercises? So, I missed it completely. It was a nice time to relax and unwind. I hope everybody who watched it enjoyed it, but, I could care less.
No, it's, I agree. It's just, to me, it's just, get it over with and let's move on and get back to regular season NHL. Yeah. And thankfully tonight is that night with that. I thought bringing the drafting of the players though back was probably a good thing. It keeps it a little fresh. And I did like the couple of the events that they added, and the skills were pretty good. So that's why I give it certainly an improvement from years past. But is it still going to be something that I think, it's so exciting, I can't miss it? No, absolutely not. And shout out to whoever made the decision, because we did the home team goal songs Patreon exclusive video that they actually incorporated the home team goal songs for of the team whose player scored a goal throughout the All-Star games on Saturday. So that was pretty cool. Like when Bjorkstrand scored, you heard Nirvana, Lithium. Yeah. When Philip Forsberg scored all the times he did, you heard Tim McGraw. I like it. I love it for the millionth time. So that was cool. That they brought the home team goal songs with everybody on the road for this All-Star game. So that was pretty cool. And one last point before we get to Monday's card. And I want to acknowledge one thing about Bettman's press conference, and that was the big announcement regarding the international best on best competition returning. And that definitely it was long overdue. Long overdue. It's been way too long since we've had a marquee international hockey tournament take place. Now, it's going to be a little half-assed next year, this 4-nation face-off that they're going to have next year. But there's really nothing that Gary and Bill and the NHL could have done, because the only time on the calendar, they've already planned out the NHL calendar for next season. So the only time they had to put together a best-on-best international hockey tournament was in February, and replacing the I don't think anyone's going to complain, by the way, about replacing the All-Star game with that best-on-best tournament next year. Absolutely not. So that was a good decision. But to make it work in the time frame that the NHL had at their disposal, they couldn't include 7, 8, 9 countries in that tournament next year. So that's why they had to make the decision. We could only go with 4 teams. And if you're going to pick 4 teams, excluding Russia because of the whole Ukraine situation still going on there, if you're going to pick the 4 best countries, who are you going to pick? You're going to pick Canada, USA, Finland, and Sweden. And that's exactly what you have in that 4-nation face-off. So yeah, it's kind of a little dumbed down version, if you will, of an international best on best. The real thing is really it's going to feel like the real thing, obviously, in 2 years when they go back to the Olympics in 2026. That was the other big part of the announcement. Olympic participation for NHL players is back starting in 2026. It will also be 2030 and moving forward after that. They've come to an agreement with the IIHF, which, it's time to make it happen. It did. They were able to get that deal done. So 2026 and 2030, there will be Olympic hockey involving NHL players, best on best. And it sounds like there will also be a World Cup event for every 4 years during the every other 2 years when there's no Olympics. So basically, it'll be Olympics 2026. That'll be your international hockey tournament involving the NHL players, best on best. 2028 will be a World Cup involving NHL best on best. 2030 back to the Olympics. 2032 back to the World Cup, etc. That's going to be the pattern that we're going to have. So basically, Alex, we're going to have an international best on best tournament every single 2 years, starting in 2026, whether it's Olympics or World Cup. And there's people that are the newer era people that have been bemoaning the fact we have not seen the Crosby, Ovechkin era melt with the McDavid, Matthews era. And now we're going to finally get a chance to see all these players perform, best players on each nation internationally every 2 years, starting in 2026, with that, of course, that 4-nation face-off taking place next year as well. So I don't think there's many people that are going to be negative about that announcement.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of middle of the road about it. Like I've made my feelings felt about international play for quite some time, but at the end of it all, and the biggest thing, the takeaway for me from the Bettman, presser was the fact that he said it. The players want this the most. And once he said that, then that kind of softened my stance, because the entire time that we hear about these things of the Olympics and all this international play, it just seems like it's just, this is the NHL trying to shove it down our throats and saying we need to expand the game globally, even though over half the league's coming from Europe. But never mind that. So the players want to represent their country in front of their friends and families and their fellow countrymen, and that's understandable and that's fine. And like you said, when you go back in the annals of history, right? We talk about the greats of Gretzky and Lemieux and all these different players, but we forget that, yes, they weren't all in the Olympics all those years, but they had Canada Cup, you had the Summit Series, you had all these things, and all of these stories and all of these series that end up creating these legends from these players. A lot of that came from that international play, just like it did the regular season and the playoffs. So in understanding that and in keeping in that part of tradition with hockey history, then, okay, by all means, let's go at it. And like I said, kudos to the NHL, an organization that bumbles shit constantly, to be able to put together something, like you said, we're already having things set up for next year, but finding a way to shoehorn this in, and it seems like it's going to be fairly reasonable, not too crazy. There's the gaps within the schedules. Guys will have time to rest. It won't be anything that's super conflicting with stretching out the regular season schedule. So that's perfectly fine as well. I do think the timing of this is interesting. It's funny. Someone in the chat said, the timing of us dropping that Patreon video about the goals in the same week that the All-Star game does that kind of same setup. But isn't it quite interesting now where you have the rise of USA Hockey over the last several years, combining with the unfortunate events of things that have happened with Hockey Canada. And now here we have year after year a chance to showcase both the rise of the USA program from where it was from, say, 40 years ago when everybody thought it was a miracle that they beat the Russians on ice, to now we get to also see the rebuild and the restructuring of Hockey Canada, because it was so bad back in the day, but now everything's going to be all nice and fixed up over the next few years, and we're going to get to see that in person, because that's probably the real reason why they're doing all of these tournaments.
Yeah, exactly. It's that's an excellent point. Yeah, we're rushing to get this international tournament now that the USA Hockey is starting to turn into a mini little powerhouse now. Like, they're not there yet, but my goodness, folks, they are on the rise. And this national team development program that they set up years and years ago, it is turning the USA into more of a hockey nation than they've been in. Like, the young kids, the amount that are really turning to hockey right now, and it's the Sun Belt states. There's kids learning to play the sport in Florida and becoming good at it. There's kids learning to play the game in Arizona, California, Texas, where a guy, Matt Robinson, is initially from, and they're getting better at it. Look at him. Look at Matt. Matt's from Texas, went to college hockey at Arkansas, which is not a traditional hockey school either. So it's just showing you the signs of growth and development of USA Hockey, Alex. It's amazing. And they're on the rise. Like, it's not just they're developing more players and more talent. They're developing more elite players, strong players, upper echelon talent. That's the key.
The balance in North America between talent in the U.S. and talent in Canada has never been more on an even platform than it is right now at this very moment. And the fact that it could possibly even shift in the tide of the U.S. is astronomical. So the NHL is going to take this time to capitalize on.
It's a combination. The surplus of hockey among kids in the U.S., and it's not like there's a decline in hockey in Canada among the kids, but slowly but surely, the last 2 to 3, 4, 5, 10 years, more Canadian kids are playing baseball, basketball. Look at the basketball and numbers and how many more Canadians are playing basketball now, and it's probably part of it too. More diverse country as far as people up in this nation as well. So, look. Most kids are going to play hockey in Canada. That will never, ever, ever, ever change. But even just a fractional decline in hockey and kids choosing other sports over hockey in this country, combined with the surge in the U.S. with kids playing hockey, even an increase there, even if it's small, and even if the drop here is small, it's going to combine to make, the USA a much more on the level playing field with Canada and anyone else.
I just want to say this. It's very, very likely that kids still continue to play hockey in Canada. But never say never, because 70 years ago, there were a bunch of people probably saying the same thing here in this country about baseball. A lot of things have changed. So,
exactly. So it's like I say, the trajectory of international hockey and the pendulum, really, it's fascinating to see it unfold. Yeah, the Nikita Kucherov stuff got a lot of attention. Obviously, he kind of dogged it in some of those events, and kind of became the heel, the heel of the event, if you will. I mean, he was booed all the time by the crowd, which, look, they've got a natural rivalry with Tampa Bay. There's no question about that. So I didn't mind it. Actually, it kind of livened up the event that there was someone that was kind of, it brought a little something extra to it, that Kucherov was playing it up and, kind of giving it to the crowd. They were giving it to him back. So I got nothing wrong with that. It's good stuff.
That's good. That's what you're supposed to do.
Event. Yeah.
And that's called a rivalry, folks. We have those things in sports. When you got one team doesn't like each other, then the other team doesn't like each other, and then they clash, and then the fans kind of go at it too. We have those things in sports. I know we're trying to get rid of all of that now in 2024, but those things still exist sometimes. So.
Yeah. We can always bring in the NBA way of doing things. We all hug each other after every game there. We can hug each other, embrace, and good game, bro. Let's go. I mean, geez,
like
you're right.
Yeah.
We've lost some of that. We've definitely lost some of that. That like general, I hate your fucking guts when I'm playing your ass on the ice or the court or the field or whatever the case may be. We've lost some of that. We're all, hey, bro, love you, bro. Even after a game, I got killed 42-3 in a football game, but still love you, bro. Right after that game, I don't love shit when I've been my ass beat 42-3. Sorry. I could never react and respond that way, Alex, after a game.
Because
I'm going to
they don't
hug the
hate.
guy that just kicked my team's ass 42-3. I'd have a hard time doing that as a
You
competitor.
can use the Shoresy quote for a lot of what's going on in the world of sports today. A lot of these guys don't hate to lose.
Yeah, that's true. You know why it is? They're being paid exorbitant amounts of money, the likes of which, is just getting out of control.
It's not even a money thing. It's not even a money thing because you got guys who get paid tons of money. Kobe Bryant made a whole bunch of money in his career. The man hated to lose.
Yep, true.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of people. Yeah, no.
Point.
You have to have that competitive fire's got to run both ways. Everybody's got competitive spirit in the positive manner. Sometimes you got to have that competitive spirit. Like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan made up shit about people on the court. Saying stuff about him that fueled him to go after that one guy, but that wasn't about him personally. That was the way he had to get himself motivated to beat that team and lead his team to victory. You don't have shit like that anymore, and it definitely don't have it like he did in hockey even 20 years ago, in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt. We're not always going to have a time to talk about things outside of hockey, but there is one thing I want to bring up before we get into the Monday games, and we'll get to those in a moment. Last night, obviously, there's not a whole lot going on. I watched a little NBA, a little college basketball, but there weren't many games of either going on last night. So I just happened to flip on the Grammy Awards for a little bit last night, and I am a music fan. I'm not as big into the newer music as the older stuff, but when I'm flipping around and I just let's see what what's going on with the Grammys, and I see Tracy Chapman on my screen, I just like, whoa. And I just all of a sudden stop in my tracks, and I'm hearing her sing Fast Car, which is one of the legendary pieces of songwriting to this day. And she has not lost a step either. The voice, it sounds like I was listening to the original recording from 1988 when she did that song in the studio. That's how good she still sounded on the stage last night, singing Fast Car in the duet with Combs, the country singer. Who, look, I don't mind his version. His version's actually okay for a country stylized version of that song. It's okay. It's certainly not anything like Tracy's. Tracy's the original. It's the OG. It's the greatest. But no, to see her and hear her on the stage was phenomenal. I caught a piece of that. Was pretty good. I saw Joni Mitchell's performance at 80 years old, coming off a fucking brain aneurysm. Are you kidding me? To be able to get up on that stage and be able to sing like that, extremely impressed. And Joni Mitchell, go and listen to some of Joni Mitchell's hits from the 60s and 70s. Oh, she did a song about Raised on Robbery. It was a great song, and she actually incorporated betting into the lyrics. It's a phenomenal song, Raised on Robbery. Phenomenal. That's my favorite Joni song to this day. Raised on Robbery. Seriously, look it up. It's a great, great song of hers. And so her being up there on the stage was absolutely outstanding, and she did a great job. I mean, she did a great job for 80 years old and going through the health issues she's had. Incredible. And then, of course, the night ends with the controversial moment of the night, if you will. It was just heartwarming to see Celine Dion, of course, up on that stage. We know she's got this, from what I've read, it's something called a stiff syndrome, something like that, where her muscles spasm just randomly at any moment. She has a hard time speaking and getting her. That's why she stopped touring and stopped doing her performances live for last year and this year, because she can't use her voice to sing, the way she has to sound like Celine Dion, obviously one of the most powerful voices in the history of female artists, as far as I'm concerned. So, to see her there when she's going through these health struggles lately was great. She got a great ovation. And of course, she not only was it great to see her, but she also shouts out Sting and Diana Ross, who awarded her the Album of the Year award 27 years ago, talking about who presented her with that. So she presents the Album of the Year award. Of course, you know who wins it. She's only been all over our television screens in every football game involving the Kansas City Chiefs for the last few months, Taylor Swift. So she gets up there on stage. She's obviously shocked because she broke the record for most Album of the Year wins. And there she is with Celine Dion, I think, just about waiting for Taylor to at least do something, handshake, hug, something, and just totally ignores her, totally blows her off. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, my goodness. The rule number one with these damn award shows, man, when you win an award like that, I don't care if the presenter's an 8-year-old girl with no, she's not famous. She's not, an icon or anything. I don't care who it is. Whoever presents that award, when you go up on that stage and accept the award, you acknowledge that person, a handshake, or something. And that's Celine Dion. That's an iconic singer in our lives. There's this thing out there that's known as the vocal trinity. Do you know what the vocal trinity is? The 3 female singers that are widely considered the greatest, most powerful female singing voices of all time. 1 is Whitney Houston, 2 is Mariah Carey, and 3 is Celine Dion. That's the stratosphere she stands on right now as far as female voices are concerned. And there's Taylor Swift acting like she wasn't even up there, on that fucking stage. And what's hilarious about it is I know for a fact, once that show ended, someone, an agent, a manager, someone in PR for Taylor Swift got in her ear right after that show ended and said, you totally didn't even acknowledge Celine Dion, right? You realize that when you accepted that award. And then they had that silly little photo that's floating around everywhere with Celine and Taylor after the award show. And it's like, if that's not a staged planned thing to just calm down the people that were kind of upset by that, that's all PR, man. She knew she done fucked up, and I don't think it was intentional. I think it was completely unintentional. She was just caught up in the moment and totally ignored her. But at the same point in time, yeah, that was the PR of Taylor Swift getting in her ear and say, hey, Taylor, you realize you didn't acknowledge one of the most iconic singers of all time on the stage. Didn't act like she was even there. You better do something about this. You better nip this shit in the bud. And next thing you know, there's that photo like 5-10 minutes later after the show with Celine Dion and Taylor. So if that's the PR getting in Taylor's ear saying, you got to do something about this. You got to make this right. And sure enough, we see the picture right after that. So pretty funny how that transpired. But yeah, there I am. My night at the Grammys because I was bored last night.
No, it's funny that you say that because I ended up watching too. Like I said, I had writing assignments and I just had it on the corner, there's nothing else on. And I saw that moment and realized that, and I was stunned by the fact that her shock of surprise, the fact that you've already won 7 out of the 8 awards you were nominated for, and to be surprised that you broke the record, that was bewildering anyway.
That was the you got to put out the fire picture, JT. That's what that was. Yeah.
And right. And so then, like I said, for her to go on stage and all that, and to not be like, oh my God, Celine Dion, but it also shows signs of the times too, that, you have this disconnect throughout the years. And we talk about this in sports too, right? It really kind of can bring it back into sports. We always talk about that disconnect of how, you have guys who play in the league now in any sport and don't really know the history of going back 30, 40, 50 years. And it kind of shows and just reflects in certain things like that. And so it's no different than it is in music or any other kind of profession. And just a show of the times. It's unfortunate. And like I said, PR cleans everything up. That's what they're there for. And they move on with it.
And that's exactly what happened. That's why you saw that picture 10 minutes later. But there you go. I'm happy hockey's back when I'm spending 5 minutes of this show talking about the Grammy Awards. So it is time to move on to what we do best, and that is capping NHL hockey. Back in action following the All-Star break, and we will begin with the New York Islanders taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is in Toronto this time, so we don't have to hear any of the more of those boos toward John Tavares tonight. We've got the Leafs minus 145 home favorites, 6.5 the total here in this game. Toronto, it's interesting because obviously you've got this team, Matthews and Nylander, all the All-Stars. This is the team that, if you talk about situationals, Toronto actually, of the 4 teams tonight, is in the best situation. Nobody has to travel, because the All-Star weekend was in Toronto. Unless you're someone that was on vacation in Cabo or Cancun or somewhere during the course of the bye week. But certainly anyone that stayed in Toronto during the bye week, and of course those that were involved in the All-Star festivities, there's no travel. So it's probably a nice advantage here for Toronto in this game tonight against the Islanders from that standpoint. And it looks like everyone's good to go for the Leafs tonight, outside of David Kampf. David Kampf, fourth liner, more of a defensive-minded player for this team than anything else. They did announce he'll miss the next 3 games for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So he'll be out of the lineup, but it looks like for the most part, everybody else good to go here tonight for the Leafs in this game. Meanwhile, the New York Islanders, who have not gotten off to this great run. The coach bump has not yet taken place here for this Islanders team since Patrick Waugh came on board. It's been a struggle for them, in fact. You go back to the game against Dallas in his debut. They won in overtime 3-2. That's the only game they've won since Sir Patrick has taken over behind the bench. 3 straight losses for the Islanders since then to Vegas, Montreal, and Florida. We will see if they can bounce back, see if they can use the All-Star break, if you will, hit the reset button a little bit. They are still a little bit banged up. Adam Pelech, it looks like, who they just got back recently from injury, is day-to-day upper body injury. Looks like he will be a game-time decision, but he apparently looks like he's probably more likely than not to play, but just hasn't been confirmed yet for the Islanders side of the equation. As far as this game goes, as far as the series history goes, look, the New York Islanders have always been a thorn in Toronto's side. In fact, head-to-head, the Islanders have won 3 straight. However, all of those games were in Long Island. It is worth noting, including each of the 2 in overtime earlier this year, both of them 4-3 Islander wins at UBS Arena. I definitely think Toronto wants to avenge those 2 losses. I think they're in a good situation here, and the fact that there's nobody that has to travel back home, unlike every other team coming from the All-Star game. So that's probably an advantage for the Leafs here in this game. Do I want to lay minus 145? No, I don't. What I will do is I'll probably jump on Toronto live if by chance the Islanders get ahead, at any point in this game. That's something I might consider doing. Nothing really as far as the total either, because, it's a weird situation here with these 2 teams. I would lean over just because of the fact that we've seen 4 straight overs with these 2 teams, 5-2, 7-2, 4-3, 4-3 between them. Even though the Islanders, I think, are trying to make a concerted effort under Patrick Waugh. I think Patrick Waugh wants them to be more of a defensive team. It sure looks that way with the way they've played here since the break. But certainly series history points to goals, and that's kind of the strong series history I don't really want to go against. So I will lean over the total here in this game with the Islanders and the Leafs. If everything's going to be pretty small from a betting standpoint for me tonight, wager amount-wise. It's always a little dicey for these teams first game after the break, but we'll have a small look, maybe over 6.5, maybe Toronto live if they fall behind. But more importantly than that, we simply have to. We saw overtime in the first 2 games with these 2 teams head-to-head this year. You got the Toronto Maple Draws, one of the biggest overtime shootout teams of the season, going past regulation against our guys, the New York Islanders, Draw Island. How do you not take the draw? How can I not, in the very first game back from the break, take a draw, especially with these 2 teams involved? So it's going to be a small little look to the over and the draw for me pregame. Maybe we'll find some value on Toronto live if they fall behind. What do you think here in this one, Alex? Islanders, Leafs.
So first, I got to correct you. It's St. Patrick for Patrick Waugh, Sir Patrick for Patrick Kane. So
yes,
Sir Patrick. St. Patrick. St. Patrick.
That's
being
right.
Patrick Waugh.
Got them mixed up.
And one of the things here that leads, of course, we're going to be talking about draw season. We're wearing the hoodie. You can get the hoodie at the Ice Guys store. But one of the things, like I said, it's now going to be more based on just criteria situations and runs, not just full-on trends. Now, we ran these 2 teams into the ground betting the draw, and they've cashed for us. Number 1 and number 2 in the league, Toronto and the Islanders, respectively. And the last 2 meetings we saw with these 2 teams, 4-3 identical overtime finals. Like I said, that wasn't in New York. But when you add in the factor that you had 4 arguably the 4 most important Leafs players already playing through the weekend, being there and home. Now, like I said, you're cleaning the confetti off and everything's kind of resettling back to normal. Not like there was a whole big explosion of excitement throughout the whole weekend from that crowd. So it's not like they have much to calm down about. That being said, where's their energy going to come from? They didn't get hyped up this weekend. Are they going to get hyped up because the Islanders are now here on Monday? Probably not. Same thing with the Islanders. They're playing everything close. Waugh's got them playing more defensive responsible. They look like the Islanders that we've seen for the last 3 or 4 years. So with that being said, on top of the history, at plus 370 at FanDuel, I'll be on the regulation draw. I will also take some small shots with correct score, 2-2 and 3-3 within regulation. Both of those are at 13-1. You can get those at FanDuel as well.
And it's Ilya. It's the Ilya Bowl once again tonight with Ilya Sorokin and Ilya Samsonov starting for their respective teams in this game tonight. I'll be honest, as far as player props, guys, I am treading very lightly these first couple of days because unless there's some big value with and great plus price value with someone jumping up the lineup due to injury or change in the lineup, because the problem is when you bet, like, let's say if you bet players that are in good form, point-wise, and that's a lot of my player props, too. It's not just players moving up the lineup, but I'll bet someone that scored in 4 straight games, or someone that has points in 4 straight games, or goals or points in 4 of the last 5 games. Well, this is kind of like you're starting a second season now, because a lot of these teams, including Toronto, they've had a 1 week off. Toronto hasn't played since last Saturday. So it's not only the Thursday to Sunday All-Star break, They haven't played since last Saturday in Winnipeg, against the Jets. So this is like an extended hiatus and layoff for some of these players. So I'm not always anticipating the scoring streak to continue when you've been off this long. It's kind of like you're starting a second season inside, the same season. So for that reason, I'm treading a little carefully here with the player props coming out of the gate. But as far as this game goes, there's not really a whole lot that I see as far as players moving up the lineup. Matthew Nyes is the one exception. Maybe I look in that direction with him because he's on the top line. He was starting to play a lot better, actually, right before the break. He went through a funk earlier in this season, but I thought he was playing better before the break. He might be worth a look tonight for the Toronto Maple. And, of course, Tavares. I'm never going to talk anyone out of Tavares props against the Islanders. I'm certain he's always going to want to put his best foot forward against his old team. Next up, we've got the Avalanche and the Rangers. Minus 110 both sides, 6.5 the total here in this game. This matchup, by the way, I do shout out to Alexander Georgiev. He was one of the better goalies as far as his performance in All-Star Weekend, honestly. He was actually very, very good. I mean, I've never seen someone use a poke check as effectively and as often as Alexander Georgiev did, but he was a wizard with that poke check throughout the All-Star game and thwarting several of the good chances that came his way. So got to give Georgiev credit. That was a solid All-Star game performance from him. His Avalanche were playing pretty good going into the break. A team that hasn't always been great on the road, but they started to play some better hockey away from home. And then on their 2-game homestand to wrap things up before the break, they pounded both the Capitals and the Kings, 11-3 combined score in those 2 games. Georgiev will be in net tonight against his old team. Not at all a surprise here. And it'll be Jonathan Quick getting the nod tonight for the New York Rangers. I guess it's a decision. You know what? Igor Shesterkin's coming back from being in the All-Star festivities in Toronto. So we'll just be careful here and give him a couple extra days. I'm sure we'll see him against Tampa Bay more than likely on Wednesday night, which is a TNT game coming up. So we'll see how this one goes. But yes, Quick and Georgiev, your starting goaltenders here between these two teams. Here's another situation where we've got both of these teams last year in their 2 head-to-head meetings. Both of them went past regulation. So I certainly wouldn't talk anyone out of a draw here. I hate to be redundant here, these first 2 games coming out of the chute, but my goodness, you see shootouts with both of these 2 teams last year in the 2 meetings. In New York, it was a 3-2 Avs win in a shootout, and in Colorado, it was a 2-1 Rangers win in a shootout last season. So keep that in mind. The Rangers trying to get on some sort of a roll. They did not play their best hockey going into the break, just 2-4 in their last 6 games, although they did finish on a high with the 7-2 victory over the Ottawa Senators right before the break. As far as this game goes, this is for me, when I look at this matchup here, I like both teams to score in the first period. That I do like. I think that's my favorite stance in this game. The full game over, I don't know, because we have seen unders with these 2 teams, 3 straight, in fact. And I could see this being a situation where we see both teams find the back of the net early and then things kind of settle down after that. One thing I want to point out, too, about Jonathan Quick, who's had a very, very solid season. I don't think the New York Rangers envisioned he was going to be able to give them what he's given them. He's had a very good first half, 2.43 goals against, .915 save percentage, but a little rockier the last month or so where, 3 of the last 5 starts, he's given up at least 3 goals. So, it hasn't been necessarily as great as he was in October, November, Jonathan Quick, but he's still certainly given them a lot better goaltending than I think any Ranger fan would have reasonably expected coming into this season. So it's really not a lot here. I'll probably sprinkle on the draw, even though I like the draw in the Leaf game a little bit more. And I like both teams to score first period in this. I think the value is good. And I could see, but both of these teams have been better offensively than defensively, too, going into the break at the very least. So I think both teams could find that back of the net in the opening 20 minutes of play, Avalanche and Rangers. What do you think here, Alex? Colorado, New York Rangers.
Yes, I like sprinkles on both of those plays that you had, both teams to score in the first and the draw. But I also like Rangers' first period puck line. I grabbed plus 175 last night. I've seen it now as high as plus 185 or plus 190, laying that half a goal. I think, like I said, this is a game. If I would be more high on the draw if this was played 3 weeks later from now, where teams were both back in the swing of things. Colorado team playing another team out of conference going cross country. This would definitely be a spot where I'd be a little heavier on the draw. And it makes sense from that kind of criteria. But I think the Rangers have something to prove here. being at home, want to start off hot with the second half run. And I think they can at least get out of this first period with a lead. Now, that might open up some spots to grab Colorado live at plus money, especially since we have the draw. So we can, we can manipulate this a little bit. Like I said, this is one of those two teams that I want to be betting on more moving forward. And I like the prices on both sides. We're not going to see $1.10 with the Rangers or Avs too often, even against higher tiered opposition. But I got to see, like I said, this is a week where we don't just jump out and start throwing 5-6 players at the wall and everything, because we got to see how these teams are going to respond off of the break. Like you said, Georgiev playing in the All-Star game, and he's not getting the rest because he wants to play against his old team, I'm guessing. So, that situation, is he going to look sharp because he's playing his old team, or is he going to be rusty because he played, the other day, and now all of a sudden, Rangers jump out with a 3-0 lead. So taking some shots with the first period, both teams to score, and the draw, and Rangers first period puck line. Like I said, you can lay the half a goal as high as plus 190, I think it was what I saw at Pinnacle earlier. So.
All right, Rangers puck line first, which means let's get a 2-1 Rangers after the first period. That would be what we're looking for. Cash everything, whole team to score, get that Ranger first period puck line, and sprinkle on the draw as well. That's a good stat from Terry. Alexis Lafreniere over 2.5 shots on goal, plus 120. He's hit this mark 9 of his last 10 home games with the Rangers. Very good. Like I say, I'll get back into the fray when it comes to shots on goal at playoff time, but I'm still very leery. I've just seen too many bad examples of shots being taken away, and it makes no sense. And you see a shot on goal, and it looks like it obviously was a clear shot on goal. Goalie made a save, and it's not registered as one. Like, it's just been, they got to iron this out for me to get involved with it more actively during the regular season. But in the playoffs, I will invite chaos into my betting repertoire and bet shots on goal props more often in the playoffs, simply because we have less games and less opportunities, obviously on a daily basis once we get into playoff time. So I will dabble more once we get into the playoffs with shots on goal. But right now, not something I'm rushing to do.
A bad cook will screw up serving food to a party of people just like they would serving to somebody they know. So, less games may not solve that problem, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. Are these guys going to be better at is the process of registering shots on goal are we going to get better just because it's Stanley Cup playoffs? Especially if it's the same people involved in the process. That's the problem, right? But I wish you well. Certainly I wish everyone well that bets the shots on goal props, but I've seen a lot of crazy, very frustrating things as far as betting shots on goal this season, and definitely something that concerns me. Yeah, Zach Parise, is he making his Avs debut tonight? That's a great question. I didn't mention that.
Yeah, he was supposed to be.
Yeah, I think so. I would think so. He's there. He's there to be. And you know what? Why not? Actually, I agree with what Cuban's thinking here. They're putting him on a second line with Johansson and Lehkonen. You're talking about an opportunity to, hit the ground running, get minutes, play in a top 6 role with good players. And then, of course, Drouin, McKinnon, and Rantanen. That great top line is going to stay together. So I don't mind that look from Cuban, Zach Parise here, to maybe find that. And look, he did torture the Rangers. I do remember that when he was a member of the New Jersey Devils many years ago. So why not? Why not there with Zach Parise as far as a goal prop option there for the Avs? As far as the Rangers go tonight, I'm just seeing what kind of Blake Wheeler has suddenly been, a nice, productive force lately on the top line with Zibanejad and Kreider. Going into the break, he scored in back-to-back games going into the All-Star break. So why not little Blake Wheeler action? Again, Blake Wheeler's not the offensive dynamo he was earlier in his career, but as long as he's playing on the top line, he's not a stiff either. He can still get things done, especially when there's good players next to him on that top line. And right now, with Zibanejad and Kreider, there's some nice chemistry going between the three of them. And he scored in back-to-back games for the Rangers as well. So don't mind that look as well. Blake Wheeler with the New York Rangers up on that top line. Great stuff. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Hit the like button. A couple of things before we get to our Boston Hemp Inc. ad, as well as bargain bin special of the night and best bets. Again, patreon.com/Ice Guys, just $10 per month. There it is on screen. And again, Patreon exclusive Betcast is coming your way this Saturday, our first of the month, Saturday, February 10th, our Super Saturday, Super Bowl weekend, Ice Guys live Betcast at 6 p.m. Eastern. But you'll get access to that by signing up at patreon.com/Ice Guys. You'll get our sides, totals, and player props every single day, posted on the Patreon page. Goalie charts, totals charts. We posted 2 brand new, hot off the presses, Patreon exclusive videos during the All-Star break. So make sure you check those out. All that and more, patreon.com/Ice Guys. And again, your $10 per month subscription goes a long way to keeping this show going for the long term. So make sure you sign up. Patreon.com/Ice Guys. Just $10 per month now is a perfect time to sign up for that with the second half of the season beginning. And there's the reminder as well with the Super Bowl weekend, Super Saturday NHL live betcast. This Saturday, February 10th, 6 p.m. Eastern. Now, this is not a Patreon exclusive betcast. This is open to everybody, free for all. So anyone can join and attend and watch the betcast live starting at 6 p.m. Eastern. We're starting it at 6 p.m. Eastern because that's a damn good game at 6 p.m. Saturday night, Colorado and Florida. So we will be on the air right from the beginning of that game on Saturday night. So it's our Ice Guys Super Bowl weekend, Super Saturday NHL live betcast, Saturday, February 10th, this Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern. DM me or Alex or email either of us as well for a spot on the betcast on Saturday night, and we will make sure we send you the StreamYard link for that betcast. And of course, as well, don't forget about the Ice Guys store. Get your gear, get your merch, the draw season hoodie that you see Alex wearing, all that and more available at the store. 3 days left to get 2 or more items with standard free shipping as well. iceguys.myspreadshop.com.
That's right. Yep. Go on to the site, iceguys.myspreadshop.com. You will see the redeem button at the top of the screen. If you get 2 or more items, you will get free standard shipping. There's 3 days left on that deal. So you got everything in stock right now. We did take some of those items off over at the limited edition shop as well. So we only got a few things that are there available right now at the moment. So you can check both stores, but definitely want to take advantage of that sale deal right now. And that's over at iceguys.myspreadshop.com.
All right. Yeah, check it out. iceguys.myspreadshop.com, the store, and get yourself some great merch. All right. As we announced before the break, our everyday sponsor of the Ice Guys show is our good friends at Boston Hemp Inc., sponsoring this show 7 days a week, as well as our betcasts moving forward here on the Ice Guys show. And it's time to hear from them right now. There it is, Boston Hemp Inc. Make sure you check them out. Our great sponsors again every day here on the Ice Guys show. Boston Hemp Inc. Doing a great job, and great to be re-upped with them, if you will, for the long run as our sponsor here on the Ice Guys show. Be sure to check out the quality products from our sponsor, Boston Hemp Inc. today. Use promo code Ice Guys to save 20% off all orders at bostonhempinc.com. All right, it is time for Bargain Bin Special of the night, our first post All-Star break iteration of the Bargain Bin Special of the night. Only 2 games, Alex, so I understand if you pass, but anything you found?
No, I did. And we're going with that Toronto and New York Islanders game. You mentioned it's not going to be in Long Island, so we won't hear the boo birds out there for John Tavares, but I think he'll still step up and score, and I think he'll be able to do that first and foremost. So let's go with him as high as plus 1,500 at FanDuel to get the first goal of the game, John Tavares for the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's my Bargain Bin Special.
There we go. Johnny T. John Tavares, first goal of the game for the Toronto Maple Leafs for Alex B. Smith with his Bargain Bin special of the night. And I do have one, even though there are only 2 games here on this NHL slate. Of course, we're probably going to have a good selection to choose from tomorrow night with the 8-game slate. But for tonight, there is one that I am interested in. And I actually mentioned this player just on the game we talked about when we talked Avs Rangers. Let's take Blake Wheeler for the New York Rangers, plus 450 at Betano. Just a great price. Top line with Kreider and Zibanejad. Now, again, sometimes you worry about the All-Star break, just disrupting someone's momentum and rhythm. And certainly Blake Wheeler was in a bit of a rhythm before the break, back-to-back games with a goal before the All-Star break. But hopefully he can find that magic again tonight and find that rhythm again tonight. He's still going to be on that top line, and that is just an outstanding price for someone getting top line minutes for the New York Rangers. So Blake Wheeler, plus 450. Wheeler in the sky keeps on turning. Plus 450, Batano, Blake Wheeler, New York Rangers for my bargain bin special of the night. All right, best bets. First best bet segment post All-Star break. Alex, what do you like for best bet?
Decisions. What could I possibly be betting on for my best bet tonight? It's the tie, of course. The Islanders and the Maple Draws. We're going regulation draw plus 370 with Toronto and New York. It cashed in the last 2 meetings. It's cashing in 3 of the last 5 meetings. And these are the top 2 teams in that category. So we're going with the Isles and the Leafs to go past regulation plus 370. It's my best bet tonight.
All right. Not my best bet, but on my card for sure. Just like Alex. Islanders, Leafs. Actually, I should say Islanders, Maple Draws. Draw plus 370 for Alex with his best bet. My best bet, look, I don't love anything tonight that stands out. Everything's pretty small, but I like the value we're getting with that first period. Both teams to score. Colorado Avalanche, New York Rangers. Plus 154 with both teams to score in the first period. I think both teams can find the back of the net early in this game. I think we'll see that here tonight. Avs, Rangers, both teams to score first period, plus 154. My best bet here for this Monday NHL card. All right, that'll wrap up this edition of the Ice Guys. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Hit the like button on the way out. We appreciate it very much. A reminder, the Ice Guys is live 7 days a week, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, Saturday and Sunday, noon Eastern. If you can't watch the show live, download the Ice Guys podcast in audio form on all major podcast platforms. So we'll make sure you want to tune into that podcast, download it when you can't watch the show live. For Alex B. Smith, I'm Ian Cameron. Alex is not here tomorrow, but he'll be back Wednesday. I will have a guest with me. I'm keeping it quiet, but it's a coach from over in Sweden, hockey coach, hockey scout. Looking forward to having him join us on the show tomorrow. I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Monday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. We'll see you tomorrow on Tuesday for another edition of the Ice Guys.